It is 3 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Stop all the clocks. We're going to talk about transgenderism, which we do very, very rarely on this programme for two reasons, one of which is selfish and one of which isn't. I generally upset everybody when we wade into this conversation. I'm regularly called transphobic, which is obviously hurtful and obviously untrue. But equally, I'm also called misogynistic by, I don't know if she actually used the word, but most recently a journalist I've always admired, Suzanne Moore, lumped me in with various people who are very, very prominently, I don't even know what the language is that one deploys in these circumstances, but are vocally, vociferously of the view that transgender women should be able to go wherever they want, even when it frightens or threatens biological women currently in those same spaces. So I upset everybody when I talk about this. It's a strange one. I once tweeted, for example, that it seems to me to be reasonable to exclude human beings with penises from female-only spaces, to which my friend Paris Lees replied, "You know me, we've met several times, I'm a transgender woman. Do you know whether or not I've got a penis?" And I realised that even that relatively simple contribution to the conversation didn't really stand up to scrutiny. It was quite an enlightening moment. And that's the problem I've got, is that when you talk about stuff, usually you learn more. But on this issue more than any other, when we talk about it, we almost learn less. You're constantly encouraged to entrench. Now, the reason I also avoid it is because, as 30p Lee accidentally divulged in a recent interview, that the government is determined, in the absence of any actual achievements, it's determined to turn it into culture war red meat that will divide the population and create a problem that only they can solve. No matter that plenty of other countries have got legislation similar to what was about to be introduced in Scotland and don't report problems on anything like the scale that many people with legitimate concerns fear could or might happen. And then the prospect of somebody convicted of rape, claiming to be transgender, being put in a women's prison when almost everybody watching that is very sceptical about the claim, obviously creates an enormous problem. But when the Convention on Human Rights, I forget what the correct phrase is, I'll get it for you in a minute, but when the government asks the ECHR to look into an issue, and the ECHR or EHCR responds by suggesting that some problems could be solved by confining areas to biological women, i.e. women who were born women, rather than women who have transitioned to womanhood, it is time to talk about it. But how do we talk about it? Well, I think I know, or at least I think I've got one way to do it. It's the Equality and Human Rights Commission that is suggesting that some areas of legal opaqueness could be rendered clearer if laws were introduced to ban trans women from single-sex spaces and events. Now, that includes hospital wards and changing rooms. Hospital wards, almost everybody wants to be single-sex, but many of them still contain biological men and biological women. The trans equation doesn't come into that conversation. My mum was in one. I told you about it at the time. She hated it. It's horrible. So, I mean, how changing the law is suddenly going to solve the impacts of cuts to the NHS and austerity is for Kemi Badenoch to tell you. But I think the way I'm going to approach this subject is a little bit unexpected. So, I don't know if you've heard people, it's a very lazy question, can a woman have a penis? To which the response is usually, oh gosh, got obfuscation, or clearly not, oh don't be ridiculous, oh it's so well, oh it's horrible. Can you be born into the wrong body, is the question that you ask. And I think the answer to that is obviously yes. It's been obvious for hundreds of years that you can be born into the wrong body. So when people say, can a woman have a penis? They're not really interested in approaching any sort of solution to this situation. They're just interested in bolstering the culture war. So if I were Keir Starmer or any other member of the body politic, and I were asked, can a woman have a penis? I would say I can't answer that question until you tell me who checks. Because I'm a policymaker, right? I'm a politician. And my job is to support policies and ideas. My job is not to sit in philosophical pronouncement upon the nature of gender or the nature of sex. Plenty of other people can appoint themselves to that position, and they can argue with each other, and that's absolutely fine. But I am the Minister for Equalities, let's pretend. I am Kemi Badenoch. So my job is to introduce legislation that improves the situation, ideally for everybody, alternatively for somebody. She is of the view that she wants to improve the situation for what we will call biological women, right? She wants to improve the situation for biological women by banning everybody who was not born as a biological woman from these spaces, from these female-only spaces, right? But I'm a politician. I'm not a philosopher. I have to introduce legislation that will work. So who's going to check? That's the question I've got for you. How is it going to work? Who's going to check? Here's a door, right? Two people are trying to go through it. One looks incredibly feminine, for want of a better word, but is actually a transgender woman. And one, again, speaking entirely theoretically, one looks quite masculine, but is a biological woman. Who's going to check who can go through that door? Now, it may well be that lots of other people have arrived at this conundrum already and have got good answers to it. But I can't think of one at the moment. I genuinely can't think of one. And I think this is why people who don't like thinking, or people who don't like changing their minds, or people who don't like acknowledging the existence of nuance or grey areas or difficult issues, I think that's why they're obsessed with asking questions like, what's the definition of a woman, or can a woman have a penis? To which my response is, I don't know. In many ways, I don't know. Because when you ask me, can someone be born into the wrong body, then obviously that is true. And is it possible that our notions of gender may be revolutionised in the same way that our notions of sexuality have been over the last 50 years? I'd probably say, I think it is more than likely. More than likely. So I don't think it involves cowardice to say that nobody is wrong, but I can't call you a liar. You tell me you were born in the wrong body, I can't call you a liar, or rather I won't call you a liar. I have no desire to call you a liar. I don't want to call you a lie, a living, breathing, walking lie. The condition that you experience is dishonest, it's insincere, it doesn't actually exist. There are plenty of people who will tell you that. If you are transgender, they'll tell you you're a lie. You're a walking, living, breathing lie. You don't exist. We can pretend that some elements of what you're saying can be accommodated by society, but you fundamentally do not exist. You cannot be born in the wrong body. And on the other side, you tell me that you are threatened and frightened by the prospect of non-biological women having access to your spaces, your changing rooms, your hospital wards. I mean, that's obviously already happened, but we're speaking theoretically. Your sports events. Again, that's probably a slightly more nuanced issue than simple access to space. I'm not going to call you a liar. I'm not going to say you're not really scared. You're just desperate to discriminate against these people that you find weird, or these people that you find insincere, or these people that you find dishonest. I'm not going to. I'm certainly not going to call you a liar. And then you've got the areas where we probably mostly agree that it looks like some male rapists lie about being transgender in order to make a mockery of the judicial system and the prison system. I think that's probably one area where we can all agree. But then I'm calling someone a liar, you see. In the case of rapists with penises, I'm prepared to impose a slightly less rigorous ethical code than I am with you and with you and with you. For good or for ill. So the question is, who's going to check? 03456060973. If Kemi's Law comes in, two people, both... Well, no, I was going to say both wearing frocks, which is a slightly 1970s approach to the issue, but they're not both wearing frocks. Two people, one wearing a frock in full makeup with a visible cleavage and tights on and high heels, a head-turning woman until you find out more about her, is walking towards a single-sex space, is walking towards a female space. And then here is someone with, let's just say, for the sake of argument, a shaven head, wearing dungarees, apparently flat-chested, wearing flat shoes, bother boots. Who's going to check which one is a biological woman and which one isn't? That's it for me. It's taken me quite a long time to get here. But when I hear people say, can a woman have a penis? I feel uncomfortable, and I haven't been able to work out why. But the reason why I feel uncomfortable is that it's a really stupid question. It's a really stupid question because we're not talking about philosophical or physiological definitions. We're talking about shared experiences. We're talking about two people walking towards the same door, one of whom looks like a bloke and one of whom looks like a woman, according to my upbringing and background. But what I do know, and what no one can dispute, is that the human being who looks like a woman may have been born a man, and the human being who looks like a man may be a biological woman. So who is going to check? Are we going to have a little ID card? And a scanner? Is it going to be like getting on the bus, where you'll make 50 journeys and you won't have any trouble at all, but on the 51st journey, the inspector's going to get on and say, excuse me, madam. Can't really say, excuse me, madam, can you? Excuse me, madam, he'll say, or she'll say, could I possibly check your ID, please? Obviously, it's not going to happen on a bus, because we don't have different areas on it. But you're in the changing room. You're in the ladies. You go to the ladies 50 times, but on the 51st time, you've got to prove you're a lady. How? 0345 6060 973. You can also give me a call and tell me why this is not a very important question for people actually coming up with laws designed to exclude non-biological women from single-sex spaces. Because at the moment, I can't see it. And of course, massive majority of people listening aren't going to ring in, but just do me one favour. Next time you hear someone say, can a woman have a penis? Just think about this question. Because until you tell me who's going to check, I don't see any point at all in asking the second question. Hit the numbers now, you will get through.
This is LBC.
It is 19 minutes after 11, and because this is such a minefield, for the avoidance of doubt, when I used the phrase biological woman previously, I was referring to women whose gender identity corresponds with the sex registered for them at birth, i.e. not transgender, but even biological women can be a hurtful phrase. And I'm not here for the philosophy, I'm here for the laws. I'm here to examine Kemi Badenoch's law. I'm pretending that I'm the Equalities Minister. And I'm contemplating a law that would ban transgender women from cisgender spaces. Who's going to check? Grace is in Cambridge. Can we call it the penis police, Grace, or would that be too simplistic?
Well, it would be quite ridiculous in fairness, I think. I'm a cis woman, just for clarity, and I'm pro-trans, I guess, if for want of a better word. I would have thought it was human rights.
Acknowledge the reality of it, really, is all you mean by that, I think, is it?
Yes. I mean, I believe that trans women are women and that they have the right to use the bathrooms that they've used forever.
Okay. But even if you believed that they didn't, or let us examine the thinking of people that don't believe that, a genuine question: how would it be checked? How would we police it?
Well, you can't, because of course there are other women who don't look particularly feminine. There are men who, don't look particularly masculine. Yes. Are we saying that everybody has to, go out and wear makeup? Are we saying that everybody has to really confidently show their gender identity?
I don't know. I mean, in many ways, it's not for you to answer, is it? Because you don't feel that that Kemi's law would be a good idea. It shouldn't even
be a question, frankly, because it's putting people in danger, James. Like, I know this is an uncomfortable topic for you, and it is for me as well, and you can probably hear I'm quite emotional about it, because it's recycled homophobia, and it's actually putting trans people in danger. And I'm coming at this, I don't actually know, I don't have any real life, trans friends, but I can see it constantly, and it's growing, and obviously people are in danger, and I'm seeing it online, I'm seeing it in conversation, and when Kemi Badenoch comes up with something like this, it's a confected culture war.
It's designed to do what you describe. Are you coming across it anywhere, for want of a better phrase, in real life? Because you mentioned you don't have trans friends. Do you come across people who hold the views that Kemi Badenoch is appealing to with pronouncements and policy making like this? Because I generally don't, and I do this for a living. No. But I'll tell you now, I mean, my switchboard is ringing off the hook because I generally ask the right questions. But when I see or hear other people trying to whip up anti-trans feeling, it doesn't work at the moment. It just doesn't happen.
It's a small cult. That's the reality. But they've got the right people on their side, and you know these groups that have sprung up, like LGB Alliance, they're based at Tufton Street, just like all of the others. This is what this is actually
I'm going on this occasion. You may not thank me for it. I'm going to steer away from that territory. Not because I'm fearful of it, but because I think that the focus on the question that I'm asking today is the point of this phone-in. Under Kemi's law, who would check?
It would be impossible to check. And
so how do you have a law then? What's the law for? What's the law for if it can't be in any way effectively?
It's to discriminate. It's pure and simple. It's to discriminate against trans women because they're not even looking at trans men. It's not even to discriminate.
It's to discriminate against trans women who don't look as similar to cis women as other trans women, because trans women who I always refer back to Paris Lees because I know her and I know she's comfortable with me doing this.
Fab, yeah.
And no one's going to stop her in a lobby to turn left for the ladies, turn right for the gents. No one's going to stop her.
But why should she feel as though she would be stopped? Because she's known, just like lots of other amazing trans women who are, writing and speaking. There are other trans women who are gender, can pass, they call it, as women, who receive abuse constantly from their families, from, they're discriminated.
But oddly, not from strangers, because strangers don't know that they're trans. It's only going to come from people that they know. Grace, thank you. It's a good faith question, this. But I don't think anyone should be required to answer any of the other questions about possessions of penis or about biology until they answer this question. How's it going to be introduced? How's Kemi's law going to work? Who's going to check? Who is going to staff the penis police? Lucy's in Forest Hill. Lucy, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. So I'm a trans woman, and the first thing I'd like to say is thank you for actually, having this question. Like, there's been so much discussion over the past, since the Tory leadership election, about us, but almost never with us.
Yes, I can see that. I mean, I haven't done much on this issue for the reasons that I outlined in my introduction, but I'm trying today to come up with something that would be workable in the context of what Kemi Badenoch appears to think that people want. So can you help? Can you tell me who'd check? Who'd check you? Who would check you?
The problem is, as you said, it's unworkable. Are you going to have genital inspectors in front of every toilet? Or if we're not going with that, do we start producing ID whenever we need to go to the toilet? As your previous caller said...
that would work. But it would be ID that proves that you're cis, because you couldn't have a gender recognition certificate. That would be excluded, as I understand it, under what Kemi Badenoch is considering. So anybody. So and who decides? And who decides who's suspicious?
Exactly. Quite often, you see this online. Often, you hear of gender non-conforming cis women getting attacked, getting abused in female toilets because they don't look woman enough. Like, this is just reinforcing gender roles, which is the whole point of feminism, has been to get away from these things. But also, there's the other side. If you put laws in place that say based on biological sex, that means you're going to have trans men who are under whatever unworkable definition they come up with, biologically female, who have beards, muscles, years of testosterone.
They'll have to go to the ladies.
Exactly. The exact sort of people that, all these gender criticals are saying we don't want in our toilets.
I don't know. Are they saying, no, I don't want anyone to put any words in other people's mouths, so the people you describe as gender critical, perhaps they'd be comfortable with bearded trans men in their toilets. I don't know. I haven't heard them say we wouldn't want that.
But if you think about, all the claims of the worries and the fears, of males, these are exactly the sort of people who will then be attacked for being in the toilet that a law's been put in to tell them to go to.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands, at 28 minutes past 11, I cannot see how anybody can be having the conversations that are being had in the British media and in British Parliament and in the Department for Women and Equalities until they answer this question.
And, of course, there's a bigger question of on what basis are we defining biological sex? Because the more you try and
is it anatomy? Is it hormones? Is it cells? Is it chromosomes? I mean, I know that people generally reach, for want of a better phrase, Lucy, they generally reach for the penis at this point, don't they?
The problem is, so if someone's had sexual reassignment surgery, well, they won't have a penis, so they're going to push that further back. And the problem is, when you try and delineate into clear one or the other...
How do you check that, then? How do you check this? If someone's had surgery, what was the inspection going to involve?
DNA testing.
And, of course, the point to remember, if anyone's missing it, and I doubt anybody listening to this is, but everyone has to be checked. Not just trans women have to prove, but everyone has to be checked. So every cis woman has to prove that they're not trans in order to get into that female-only space, as I understand it. Otherwise, what's the law going to do?
Exactly. Transphobia almost always ends up hurting cis women as much as it does end up hurting trans women because of all these things. What is a woman becomes, well, what gender roles are you performing? How feminine do you look? Are you fitting the stereotype? Or it ends up into ridiculous, over-the-top biological essentialism that cannot work. Because even if you go to chromosomes, even if you go to DNA, well, what happens to intersex people? Because there isn't a pure, clear line. I'll split everyone into one or the other of the two groups. There's always some crossover and grey area. They're intersex people. Where are they going to go to the toilet?
I don't know. I mean, this is why I'm going to be strict-ish on focusing this conversation entirely on the question that I'm asking. Because if, Kemi Badenoch, I was a lawmaker or a politician, then it is not for me to sit in judgment on either science or philosophy. It is simply for me to create a scenario in which this law I want to introduce could be enacted. And the law she wants to introduce is a ban upon transgender women accessing what she would call female-only spaces. And I want to know how it would work. And until you can tell me how it would work, it seems to me utterly pointless and indeed dangerous, often deliberately dangerous, to ask questions like, can a woman have a penis? I could be wrong. And the phone lines are open if you want to show me why I am. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 11:34 is the time. I don't know if this is helpful for you, but it seems to me that when we're exploring territory that involves quite a lot of trust and confidence on your part, then the least I can do is crave your trust and confidence. The first time I waded into this issue, I think, was shortly after I'd been shopping with one of my daughters. And it was policy in the shop that we went to that I can accompany her into a cubicle and help her try on clothes. So far, so unremarkable. And then by coincidence, a story popped up in the news that week about, I think, same-sex changing rooms. And I approached it from a very casual point of view. Well, hang on a minute, I was with my daughter at the weekend and there's no problem at all there. And I was thinking, and then it all went a bit weird and things still pop up on the internet. So someone rang in and was very well versed in the transgender debate, very transgender rhetoric, and ended up putting a transcript of our conversation online where it contained descriptions of what I really meant when I said what I said. Now, if you've listened to this program before, I don't generally have a problem saying what I really mean. But in these kind of conversations, everybody is so determined to demonise any dissent or even query or question that you know that's not what he meant at all. He meant this, that, or the. And so it kind of scared me off the subject, which may well have been the point. But I was actually thinking the other day that if it had been 10 years later and I had been waiting outside the changing room when my daughter went in to the changing room, if it had any form of communal area, and I am not au fait particularly with the changing facilities in I know that John Lewis has cubicles and then a communal area in the middle. The last one I went to did anyway. But I could perhaps have felt that man shouldn't be going into that space with his younger daughter. I could just about... I'm always trying to imagine the other side or a different... because otherwise you turn into... Well, let's not mention any names, but you could have a column in the Daily Mail by tea time. And it was just sort of timing, really. That idea that my position was born of a very casual and largely irrelevant recent experience of accompanying my daughter, with permission and obviously, and checking that this was fine, into a changing room so that I could basically help her. She was very young at the time. And then I can imagine having a feeling. So my introduction to this subject was absolutely pointless, to be fair. Utterly nothing to do with the conversation that has been raging now for a few years, and which Kemi Badenoch is clearly determined gets even more unpleasant and even more angry, which I can't stop her from doing that. And this platform, this little radio show is not enough to stop the tidal wave of bigotry and unpleasantness coming out of Rishi Sunak's government at the moment. But we have to keep trying. You have to keep trying. And on this issue, the question becomes, how does the law work? How does Kemi's law work? You are excluding transgender women from women's spaces. How? 0345 6060 973. And if you can't answer that, don't get cross with me. I can't stop you getting cross with me. Get cross with the people that have encouraged you to have thoughts and conversations about this issue without asking you this question, because I don't know whether it's deliberate or not. But surely, and you know, oddly, do you want to know when the penny dropped? Penny dropped when I read this story this morning, and it talked about hospital wards. Because successive Tory governments have done absolutely nothing to stop mixed wards. They've made noises about it, they've made promises about it, but they've done absolutely nothing to stop mixed wards, which is men and women, often in even adjacent beds. It happened to my mum. That's how I know about it. And it seems to me to be cynical to the point of obnoxiousness that they'll do absolutely nothing about men and women being compelled by cuts and austerity and Conservative Party policy to share wards. But when you put it through the mangle of the transgender conversation, suddenly it becomes so important we're going to have to make a law about it. Because to the best of my knowledge, the problem in hospitals for women has not been the presence of trans women in the same ward. It's been the presence of big, hairy men. Weird, that's when the penny dropped. I said, this isn't actually about policy. This is entirely about provocation. It's got nothing to do with making things work, and it's got everything to do with making people frightened and angry. I could be wrong. The phone lines are open. Sarah's in Hounslow. How would it work, Sarah?
Hi, James.
Hello.
The answer is just that it won't.
It can't. It can't. I'm going 11:39. I'm going to can't. I'm moving from won't to can't, but I could be wrong. Yeah. I could be wrong.
It can't, and they know this. This is all about othering a tiny and very, very vulnerable minority. My daughter is transgender, and she came out, when she was about 7, she started trying to harm herself, and she attempted suicide many, many times from an extremely young age, which, as you can imagine, is quite frightening.
Yes.
And we could never really work out what was going on. And then when she was 16, she came out to me, and I was flabbergasted.
Right.
But since then, it's like the sun has come out in her life. She doesn't feel afraid to be the person she is. We've had no more suicide attempts. Her depression has lifted. She is like a different person. But she is afraid when she goes out in public because she is worried about the way that people will respond if she tries to go to the toilet, if she tries to try on some clothes in a shop. And the trouble is that people like the government at the moment are stoking this hatred, and it is making, transgender people genuinely afraid. But, there is already a suicide rate an attempted suicide rate, of between around 35% to 50% of transgender people.
I'll have to take your word for that. I haven't got the statistics in front of me, but the experience seems traumatic, doesn't it? Of thinking, never mind realising that you are in a body that you don't want to be in, and caveats and cul-de-sacs and adjuncts to that statement, obviously, and there are examples of people changing their minds later. Not many, of course, but they tend to get a heck of a lot of coverage. But that idea that this would be done through casual choice when the life-changing consequences are epic. Your daughter would much rather deal with the problems that she encounters as a transgender woman than she did as someone living a lie in her own heart, mind, and soul.
She said to me, why would you put yourself through this? Why would you do that if, why would you go through all this hatred and vitriol, in the public if it wasn't really important?
Well, I had the same conversation about homosexuality when I started in this job, when people talked about it as a lifestyle choice. And I would say, why would anyone choose to be gay in a world where you exist? You've got some rabid homophobe calling for them to be strung up from the nearest lamppost or condemned to the eternal fires of hell. And you'd say, if it's just a choice, why would anyone choose to be that way in a world where you exist? And it's a similar... I hear an echo of that observation when you speak, when you tell me your daughter's story.
Yeah, they're saying that, it's such a problem. Well, since the Gender Recognition Act came in 2004, there has been 4,000 people apply for a gender recognition certificate.
Yeah.
So it is a tiny number of people. And this is what I'm saying. It is a othering of an extremely vulnerable, tiny minority.
And, I'm not getting much representation of what we'd have to call the other side on the programme at the moment, but perhaps that's because they would agree that there is no answer to this question. They're just not as comfortable stating it publicly as you are. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. How would it work? How would it work? Because you would have to prove that you are cis in order to exclude your daughter from the facilities that you can use.
Precisely. And, your previous callers made a really good point about transgender men. And transgender men almost always look much more masculine.
Yes.
And, I've seen, videos on Twitter and so on where transgender men have gone and used female facilities, and there's been, a massive hoo-ha.
Yes, of course there would. And it would have to cut both ways for it to work, wouldn't it? I mean, again, how would that be? I don't think we need to move on to that bit of it. That would be Kemi's second law. The second law of Badenoch would be that transgender men have to use the ladies' facilities. And how the heck is that going to be introduced? Who's going to sell that to the population? But that's not... I don't need to go there today. This question has got more than enough relevance and quite a lot of people responding to this with very powerful text and tweets, for which I'm hugely grateful, because I do take these subjects very seriously. I do think about them a lot, even when I'm not talking about them. I can't expect everybody to have read my books, particularly my last book on this subject, to explain my issues and my difficulties. But a lot of you feel today, like me, that we have finally got to a place where an issue that appeared utterly intractable and utterly immovable has moved. It might not have moved in the direction that you want it to move, but until you tell me how this law works, there's absolutely no point whatsoever having conversations about the definition of a woman or the pertinence of a penis. That sounds like a Jane Austen novel, doesn't it? After Pride and Prejudice, the unpublished classic, Jane Austen's Pertinence of a Penis.
LBC.
11:49 is the time. I do have to guard against introducing my middle-aged descent too much into the programme. I was tempted to ask, is it time to mow the lawn yet? I think it is if it's dry enough. Yeah, just not too short. First mow of First mow of the season, maybe a little bit of food and sea. I don't know, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Kemi's law that would ban transgender women from women's spaces. And I just wonder how she thinks it would work. It's 10 to 12 now, and none of us can work it out. So, albeit that Alisha and Ruben are already on hold, there is one phone line. Oh, it's gone. How does she think it would work? Or is it possible, do you think, that she has just announced something entirely for reasons of so-called culture war without having any substantive notion of how it might actually be enacted as a policy? I don't know. Here's another thing as well. I always try and keep on top of stories like this. 13 men in Bolton make their first court appearance today, charged with a string of sex offences against girls aged between 14 and 17. Offences including grooming. 13 men charged with those child sex offences, more than 50 in total. It's part of an investigation into child sexual exploitation in the Northwest. Now, can you think why my inbox is not peppered with Billy Bunch of Numbers and Little Tommy 10 Names fans asking me why I'm not talking about this today? Anyone? Bueller? Why is Billy Bunch of Numbers and Little Tommy 10 Names fans not peppering my inbox with questions about why I'm not talking about the latest court case? Because I could talk about it a bit without risking contempt of court, of course. I could even read out the names of the defendants. But if I did that, you'd know why Billy Bunch of Numbers and Little Tommy 10 Names fans aren't pretending to be deeply concerned about the victims in this case. I've said it to you before, and I shall say it again. If your attitude to any crime is in any way affected by the ethnicity of the alleged culprit, then you are being racist. No matter how many people in the cabinet or the British media like to pretend otherwise. The reason why Little Tommy 10 Names fans and Billy Bunch of Numbers are not peppering my inbox with questions about why we're not talking about 13 men being charged with more than 50 child sex offences as part of an investigation into grooming and child sexual exploitation is because they're white. Full stop, QED. 11:52. Back to the other side of the culture war coin that the current government is so desperate to ignite. Transgender issues. Alisha is in Cardiff. How would Kemi's law work, Alisha?
It wouldn't. I think what she's counting on is that people will feel legitimized in sort of self-check. So,
vigilante penis police.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
By the way, hi, James.
Hello, Alisha.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I've talked to you through the radio and talking back for so many years that it's so bizarre to talk to you. Hi.
Well, this is probably less satisfying.
It's interesting that, of course, like I would, I felt like this was finally the time of all the times that I answered back to the radio, because I'm a non-binary person and I'm married to a transgender woman. And what surprises me of this is that very, very few people realize all of these concepts of the penis is the evil, fundamentally, is actually a blind spot of British law, because we go along with sort of patriarchal flattery of women are wonderful, women could never do bad things.
Yes.
And in British law, a woman can be convicted of sexual assault, but not of rape, because they don't have a penis. Technically, supposedly, they think.
Are you 100% sure about that? It's not an area of expertise. Are you? Okay, all right.
Because I have been the victim of child abuse from my mother.
Okay.
And there's no other way to describe that as if not rape, but that wouldn't have been the case.
I understand.
There was a case a few months ago now, Isla Bryson in Scotland.
Careful.
And Yvette Cooper.
Was that just, I don't know, I'm always nervous when people mention criminal cases or court cases that I haven't got the names and the details at my fingertips. Just give me a brief...
Very, very briefly, like, she's a transgender woman, but she transitioned after
being convicted of rape.
Yeah.
Yes.
And rightfully, people like Yvette Cooper were like, oh, she has a penis, so she needs to go in a men's prison. And all this fuss was actually done while she was already in isolation, so she wasn't affecting either women or men, which I think should be the case for race.
Well, I fell into that position as well. I mean, for me, I can conceive of somebody, and I think people that knew her very well said they didn't believe this was true. They thought it was an attempt to evade some elements of justice. So
I think highlights an issue, a blind spot in the law. Like, you do something against other people, you shouldn't be around other people, and in that, gender doesn't come true. Like, I think the transgender issue of Sean Fay explains perfectly how transgender issues are peppered around, but just highlight blind spots that we currently have in the systems for people in general.
Yeah, but these are the blind spots we're talking about today. I don't know that we need to reach for that example at this point, because I am chiefly interested in the question of whether there is any way on earth in which Kemi Badenoch's dreams could come true on this issue.
No, again, going back to the beginning, I think the point is legitimization of all, like, the gender-critical people and all the people that, like, want to sort of look closely, and if you don't adhere perfectly to your expected gender expression, then if there's a law about it, I, random person, feel entitled to.
But that seems to be the inevitable, the inevitable upshot of it is that. I don't know whether you were aware of this, but when paedophilia finally started receiving the coverage that it should obviously deserve, and various scandals began to unfold in this country, some of the great British public started throwing bricks through the windows of paediatricians, for example.
Oh my God!
It's true, because that is what happens when the mob is fed a little bit too much. Too much red meat. Can I ask you a question from your perspective as a non-binary person married to a transgender woman?
Yeah.
Outside of your life, how I mean, and outside of the media dedicated to whipping up a firestorm on behalf of this bankrupt government, how big a deal is it, do you think?
I'll be honest. I think we're in Cardiff, and we're extremely lucky to be part of organizations that, like, are pro-LGBTQ, and we support them, and we're part of them. And the main ways that these lamentations manifest is through rallies. Like last year's Pride was co-opted at the front by TERFs, and there was an issue.
So that's a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, which is usually a description that the people you're talking about reject. I just need to be balanced.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The issue.
So they want to remove the T from LGBTQ.
Basically,
really. Yes. Okay.
The issue there is that feminism tries to sort of liberate and equate things. While from the point of view of radical feminist, the concept is, if you are against any of my ideas and I'm a woman, then you're misogynistic, which is a bit of a...
Well, I've been on the receiving end of that, but I hadn't actually managed to articulate it and say, quite, of course it is.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue.
You must be a misogynistic. Well, it's a bit like, do you know, back in the day, Alisha, I remember someone at work called me homophobic because I'd made a comment about somebody in the public eye doing something awful who was gay. And I remember saying, it's not because he's gay. It might have been when Boy George chained a rent boy to the wall, actually, and got
that was kind of an issue, wasn't it?
I didn't think, I just thought that's not very nice behaviour, but that can't possibly be homophobic to say don't chain people to walls against that. But so that, you're right, there is a bleeding into the same territory that I've experienced, but I get very sensitive about it. I'm conscious of not being as invested or as experienced as you are, or when it comes to investment, the people you just described as TERFs are. So I do probably balk more under criticism on this issue than I do on any other, which is why I'm glad that we've had this conversation today, including with you, this idea of how the law would work. How would it work? Let's introduce one more call. No one really so far, Ellie in Wakefield, has got a clue how this would actually be implemented, so no pressure on you.
This would have been my biggest dilemma.
Yeah.
Yesterday even. But I've just had a light bulb moment.
Me too.
As you introduced it.
Gosh.
Why is there a question? That's my answer.
Yeah.
I was born female. I'm heterosexual, so I don't have friends.
Yes.
On the transgender side. I also have PTSD, so you'll have to excuse me being nervous.
Of course,
due to male violence in my past.
I'm sorry.
So I believe people are people. Let them be what they want to be as long as they're not harming anyone else. But I still have that overriding fear.
Yes.
Of being in a room with men.
Yes.
But listening to you talking earlier, it took me back to days back in the early 90s. We used to go in a local bar, that had quite a high proportion of gay people in there. There'd be drag queens and so on. And it was an absolute wonderful place. It was probably the least place you would find trouble on a night out. And we used to go to the ladies, as you do, and, we'd walk in, and there'd be a drag queen at the sink, adjusting the makeup. And we'd be washing our hands, chatting away to them, getting tips and, laughing and giggling with them. And, they were just people, just like they were a person just as I was, and then, women would walk in and they may be a bit burly and tattooed and whatnot. And I'd probably be more nervous of them than I was at the man stood next to me washing his hands in the sink. So why shouldn't we take people at face value? I could be...
I do
the
understand.
first time I had real violence was in the home with my father. I had it with an ex-boyfriend, a guy I lived with. He beat me to a pulp. He held a knife to my throat. And so, I really do panic just at the sight or the sound of aggression. I cannot handle it. But I could be killed on the street. So what difference is it when I'm stood in a public toilet surrounded hopefully by other women or other transgender people who may, if there was a creep in there. And I think as women, we would know that. We would see that someone's hanging around, someone's looking at us not quite right. There's nothing worse than women for intuition, and especially...
Hang on, I'm going to correct you for the first time. I'm going to say there's nothing better than women for intuition, not there's nothing worse, Ellie. True. So, and we stand together in a group. So the fear... I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I may have misunderstood. I don't think I have. The fear you live with as part of your PTSD and as a consequence of your experiences has been fed and exacerbated by elements of the transgender conversation until today when you realise that it shouldn't have been. Is that what you're saying?
No, not really.
Good, I'm glad I checked.
Because I want to stand with the transgender people.
Right.
And you are who you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. If we go, cut it, oh, crikey. Something's more spiritual, like yin and yang.
Yeah.
There's good and bad. There's light and dark. There's male and female. My sister's probably more male than I am.
Right.
She jumps to aggression really easily.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm more passive. And there are men out there who are aggressive, but some are very passive and laid back and, let things slide. So we all have a degree of male and female within us. None of us are purely male. None of us are purely female. We're all a mix.
And we're focusing on the wrong thing. This entire confected debate focuses on the wrong thing.
We're sticking labels on people. It's like saying you can't come in here because you're black.
Do you think
Only
so?
whites are allowed.
Some people will balk at that, I think. No one's arguing for every man in the country to be able to go into every toilet in the country.
No.
But it's a discrimination. It's a different form of discrimination, but still discrimination.
It is, yeah.
Gosh.
But having said that, you know, when the ladies were packed out in the nightclub, we used to pile in the gents.
To drive me potty. Absolutely outrageous behaviour.
Yeah, and we're all looking at this from a woman's point of view.
Yes.
You know,
inevitably, I think I'm very, very late for the news. So I think you've said everything you wanted to say. I hope you have. Have you?
Should live and let live and judge people as they are.
Well, I mean, in conclusion, you've got no more idea than I have, or any other caller, or any contributor, and I haven't got any clever clogs texters telling me that, you know, that they've got the answer to this, but I won't let them on because they're too clever for me. It does happen. By the way, I do get texts like that. Who would check? If you can't answer that question, stop banging on about whether or not women can have penises. Ellie, thank you. Thank you so much. It's 5 minutes after 12.